And yeah, I'm really not venturing out much at all, but I don't mind. So yeah, I'm going from I suppose you could call yesterday's a romance horror or romantic horror. Um, and now we're going to add comedy to it. Like, why not, right? Ghost of My Neck wasn't comedy, except apparently there are many adaptations that are comedic. Apparently, the majority of adaptations are, I think. Not sure how they manage that, considering the seriousness of the story, but anyway, I don't mind beginning with a serious adaptation first. Yeah, so going to add comedy to it, though. But it's also some sort of romantic horror, though. But mm, this time it's from South Korea, so I haven't watched any South Korean horror since. Mm, not sure. Anyway, this is called Spellbound. Apparently, there aren't many comedic horror. I noticed there really aren't. Like you could fit them all on one page on this site. It's a bit disappointing. I mean, I got my first taste of it, I guess, with well, years ago I watched one called Tormented. And yeah, when I say there aren't many comedic horror, this is just Eastern comedic horror. I'm assuming there are more than are Western. Yeah, I first watched Tormented years ago. Kind of forgot it now, but that's sort of comedic horror. And then first first Eastern one I watched was Ghost is All Around. Apparently, some numbers, which is a Thai movie. No, let's watch a South Korean one. Why not? And yeah. Anyway, it's a bit long, so I'm going to begin it straight away. Yeah. And yeah, CJ Entertainment uses some nice coloring for its logo, some nice blues and this sky, a vibrant sky and such. But I wish they didn't use that intense sound. It's kind of overwhelming. I hate when they do it. It's like this crescendo, and it's about the magician apparently. The last time I watched anything about magic in general was The Prestige, which I thought was overrated. I mean, I don't know, it wasn't very impressive, and yet people seem to think that it was. They certainly like some of the Nolan films better. This Memento his. Um, yeah, and but yeah, to be fair, I think many are overrated. Like I don't know how people think that Batman movies are so amazing. And again, I made the error that of watching them without really uh, um, not having much of a background really in the series. That might be the reason. No, Prestige show didn't have much of a background. It's a standalone movie, and I thought it was just about just I don't know. Magic is a bit weird, isn't it, on TV? Because obviously they can do magic, they can use CGI for a movie. And then it depends on whether just the usual for any movie, whether the storyline is interesting and such. The Prestige had a moderately interesting storyline, but not absolutely amazing. So much so it's nearly rated on average 8/10 and such. Yeah. Anyway, this isn't about that now, but yeah. And By the way, I never saw anyone. I never saw an entertainer, someone on stage following a member of the audience. Usually it's the other way around, isn't it? Like I never even considered it might be possible. Obviously, anyone can follow anyone, but yeah. And it has some cartoons as well, apparently some animation. Any live action movie that integrates animation, in my opinion, is already it has already went a bit above most other movies because, since most do not bother with that. So my opinion has already increased for this Spellbound thing. Spellbound makes it sound like it's some Disney thing, though, doesn't it? Hmm. So, if I can understand this correctly, her so-called appointments are eating cake with a big teddy bear and drinking wine. Yeah, I don't think I've ever sunk so low myself personally, and I really have no idea how wine tastes with cake. I don't think they are compatible tastes, really. I just certainly do not associate sweet with the sweet taste with alcohol. It's alcohol is so different unless it's something unless it's like a sweet liqueur, which is locally there, but that's different, I suppose. Me, I guess, yeah, a sweet liqueur would go with it, but not quite much else. And she has a tent in her own house. Yeah, no, don't think I even did as a child. I'm not sure how. What's the point of that? Since I'm supposed to be for outside. Huh? And did she just phone to report information derived from some ghosts? That's what seems like happened here. That's most bizarre thing ever. So I guess that's the horror section of this thing. Obviously, it has much more comedy than anything, which is okay, really. I want more comedy. Just been watching a lot of pure horror these days, so a bit of de-stressing is good, isn't it? This seems like a well-constructed movie as well. I'm certainly liking it better than the Prestige, but then again, Prestige wasn't comedic, so there you go. Yeah, and that's funny. They paid the bet uh, after considering taxes. I'm not sure there's ever any bets usually done that way, but because bets are normally personal, interpersonal things. And yeah, the restaurant scene was very good, very good comedy. Um, I mean, not many people tend to be disinhibited while drunk, but not many people can still sort of formulate um, sentences sufficiently in order to offend and such to to length of time sufficient to yeah. Anyway, yeah, just that's pretty much it. This film really combines horror tropes with comedy quite well. It mainly is comedic, but after the 25th minute mark or so, when the little child is spotted by the male protagonist, I guess yeah, it really is quite funny, and along with I mean, obviously it's a bit difficult so to combine comedy with horror usually because you really need to build a profile for horror, and it usually isn't comedic. So, which is why I'm assuming there aren't actually many movies that combine both genres. And so far, I mean, in this specific example with the child, there really doesn't seem to be much that's horrific about the child themselves, besides the fact that as a trope, they they painted them all, um, you know, some, what they usually do with supposed ghosts. But considering that, well, the only position he really took that made them seem like a ghost is the initial crouch. But beyond that, there really isn't much that is very non-comedic. And so, the fact that it's almost the entire story in this context is composed almost entirely of comedy, and sort of makes it just comedy, and not horror as well. Whereas, the Thai film that I watched last, the only other Eastern comedy horror I watched, Ghost is All Around. It did combine sort of what's horror, in which case, a ghost that doesn't know that they're dead and such, along with some comedies. It's a sort of more. I mean, this is a well constructed film still. I mean, the comedy is pretty good, but it has more comedy than it does horror. So in this sense, doesn't quite. Whereas the other one was more sort of, the ratio was more 50-50 maybe. I mean, okay, I suppose what that did have a bit more comedies too, but so far this at least didn't have as much horror at any rate, right? So I mean, up to the half-hour mark, there is like maybe 2% horror. It's really not much at all. But yeah, even the fact that, in the middle of searching for the ghostly boy, they end up talking about jam and how it's homemade. I mean, such little interactions like that, really elevate this to a truly well constructed movie, as I say. I mean, yes, so far not much has happened in terms of horror, but anyway, in terms of comedy, so it's pretty good. But then they feel the need to make it soppy all of a sudden. I think it was a bit too quick, and too quick of a transition from his house to the upturned car, and then it resolved itself very quickly as well. What was it, like a minute in total? And yeah, now suddenly seems like it's going to take a turn to. I mean, I don't know if this is going to be something like, um, I don't know, but I don't know, it feels like the genre might yet change. I mean, I don't mind any sort of genre, but maybe they should be more stretched out or something, because otherwise it feels a bit condensed. And they try to combine comedy and a bit of pathos in that lake place, and I don't know, sort of worked, I guess, in combination. But that lake is so amazing, especially the last picture there. It's with the mist and everything. Um, um, Clearly, even even I mean, there are trees without much leaves, without, it seems like it's probably autumn or so. So even without much greenery, looks amazing. It really fits in with the ocean as well. It's not it well, lake, not ocean. It doesn't look very blue. So it sort of merges in. I don't know how it's almost like a painting, like it almost seems like only the bit where they were standing on it juts out to the lake seems realistic. The rest seems like it's painted on because of the mist. That's quite something. It is though a bit annoying when they when in movies they shout typically, or in the distance when they're on top of, well, in this case it's not on top, it's near a lake. But in the other movie, our little sister, they did it on top of a mountain, and it's despite it being sort of a usually a heartfelt attempt at some sort of catharsis. It's kind of annoying, for the audience at least. I'm sure it's cathartic to do it, but to hear it isn't very, because it's usually loud and such. So, um, but yeah, anyway, it's whatever it is, really. But yeah, generally this does combine genres quite ad- adeptly. It's goes from pathos to main comedy to drama to bit of horror, but very very slight. But in a way, it's a good ratio actually. I take back what I earlier implied, that somehow it didn't combine well, but it does really. And like when her sister visits her supposedly after 10 years. It's quite a funny encounter. She supposedly convinces her that she's pregnant. I'm not sure how she can be convinced, unless somehow she's never seen a pregnant woman before, especially one at 8 months. There's no way. And it's pretty obvious. It's quite different from normal fat, It's yeah, and somehow she convinced her. Then yeah, it's one of these these kind of personalities that really stand out in some movies. Most characters don't stand out, but these do. Nearly every personality does in a way. Yeah, pretty much. Um, yeah. Um, it has a good story as well. Okay, so as I said multiple times, I think this is truly a well, mixed movie as well, one could say. I mean, it makes me think that the key to something great is a mixture of genres. Not necessarily, I suppose. I mean, I've seen plenty of movies that focus mainly on a single sort of element, and they're still good. But sometimes a mixture also is very really works well. Yeah, but this specifically is like, you see, if it had just a romance on its own, it would be just you know too lovey-dovey. I mean, it sort of was. I mean, the fact that it ended in that manner, I suppose they just thought. I mean, yes, it ended like that, but then there was a bit extra that was truly funny as well. So that's pretty good, and they added in this element of. I mean, you cannot really call it a horror film. It's predominantly a comedy film, really, but it adds a lot of other stuff as well. Like there's a bit of drama, a tiny bit of pathos, but there's not really much of that. I mean, you can't call it a tragic sort of drama either. I mean, there are elements, but they're sort of equal with. horror. So I mean, it is as much horror as it is um as it is filled with pathos, which isn't much really, but they sort of go hand in hand, you know, in terms of the relationship that she had with her friend on the bus and such. Uh, yeah, I could tell what the shiny thing was before it was pelled out sort of visually. But um, and that's the thing as well. It employed the usage of coincidences as well that many other movies do. So sort of like you know this the one that I watched last, The Ghost of Naimek, uh, had a lot of coincidences that were integrated in the storyline, which didn't make the story, the plot any better or any more believable. The coincidences don't generally. So I mean, they don't make a movie any better automatically, and they didn't do that for this one either. But overall, considering that the plot and how they mixed it up and such, overall, I didn't mind the coincidences, even though there were coincidences. In terms of coincidentally as well, there were there were a couple of final destination sort of type things happening as well that also constantly happened in Ghost of Namek repeatedly. That did though have an end result, which whereas in this one there weren't. But I mean, general coincidences. I mean, in this one I didn't mind. Let's just say. I mean, everything else was sort of better than the coincidences. But yeah, overall, it had this fine-tuned thing. So I mean, that's I suppose that's what makes a movie good. I mean, you know, um, so it had some scares, but minor ones. But it did have some, you know, not as much as the movie I watched yesterday had. But that's the thing. I mean, like the movie I watched yesterday was predominantly horror, and that's where it stayed. And that's kind of why it didn't become a great movie because yeah, it was predominantly a horror, but it was also, I suppose, a romance. So in a way, it's sort of similar, except it didn't have any comedy, of course, yesterday, and it was much more tragic in this sense. So they just didn't have any comedy. Obviously, and they had, I don't know, maybe the comedy was the key to this, but it was just a vivacious film. I think it was truly, yeah. And I just liked it. I suppose because of that. I mean, so if it was just romance, I wouldn't have liked it as much. If it was just a rom com as well, I wouldn't either. I've seen many rom coms and they're mediocre at best. And there are references to rom coms, but the fact that they added a slight bit of horror tropes, at least not horror per se, but horror tropes and tragic tropes, I suppose one could say. I suppose it's they're sort of like spices that ameliorate a movie. They really do, and every minute of it was pretty good. I mean, the comedy was its forte, really, but the fact that everything added to it was quite interesting. I mean, yes, there was a bit of melodrama at the end, and there was also a scene, remarkably, coincidentally, once again, I'm not sure if they really wanted to reference it, but um, as I said, I don't exactly watch many movies about magicians, but the only one I watched, The Prestige, happened to have also a very similar scene in terms of the. I mean, obviously, it's a thing that they do only when it comes to people in water tubs or whatever they're called, and there was a very similar scene when we're literally saying, I mean, this had obviously Prestige wasn't horror, so it didn't have the same sort of elements, and it wasn't a romance either. That's the thing, though. That's why I mean I don't know. There's many elements that make a movie, I suppose one could say, and many elements that take away from a movie as well. I also don't know what people like so much about Prestige. I mean, I think I said it was close to 8 or something earlier. I just checked and it's 8.5 average rating. It's ridiculous. Like to rate something 8.5 myself, so that's between 9 and 8. It needs to be like really meaningful, really profound. I mean, what was profound and prestigious? Just a couple of people just stalking each other. Because you could say it was clever, but I don't know. Magic doesn't quite work on screen because obviously, as I say, you could do anything on screen. And the plot wasn't that exciting, I thought, either. I don't know. The only remarkable thing about Prestige, from what I remember, was I think there was an inclusion of Tesla or something, and I suppose that it was interesting. But obviously, you know, unique elements don't really make a movie great per se, in my opinion. What made this great then, on the other hand, in my opinion, greater than the Prestige as was, yes, the different elements. Whereas Prestige was just focused on this thrilling element of the two stalkers. That made little sense to me, in my opinion. Ultimately, I guess with movies, it depends on how much it connects with the audience. And of course, there's only an audience of one when one is watching them. Uh, you could be in a cinema full of people. I mean, the only effect you get, I guess, is the outward emotions, but ultimately, you still have your own thoughts, your own feelings. So it doesn't really matter. I mean, whether what does matter ultimately is how, like, this is nearly 2 hours long. This Spellbound movie is nearly 2 hours, and I don't think there were many instances where I thought this was either mediocre, drab, or a bit over the top either. Because that's another thing, many horror films are over the top. I mean, some are intentionally so, but and rom-coms can be over the top as well with the like even the IT crowd. I mean, it's not a rom-com, but I mean, what I liked most about the IT crowd is obviously the geeky comedy, but it has some, not rom-com as such, as sitcom, or like it has some over-the-top sitcom elements in it. I suppose it might have some rom-com. It's a long series, but I mean, overall, it's still a pretty good series, considering everything else. It's the same with this film, really. I think, considering everything, you include all the elements. In this case, the mixture of genres made this a better movie than usual. I think, in my opinion. As I say, if some movies do well just focusing on a single element, but some I think benefit from a mixture of elements, and this did. Whereas I don't know others. I mean, yeah. To be fair, I cannot think of any rom-com that is really great on its own as a rom-com. Just romance and comedy on its. So in a way, yeah, they would benefit with the addition of some other things. On the other hand, this sort of the same with horror. I mean, the, like even the horror that plus this horror that I really like also have other elements. Movies like Altered States are part romance as well. There's not really much comedy, but the addition of romance, I suppose, gives it a bit of life. If it was just, I mean, I barely consider it horror to be honest, but obviously it has elements and tropes and such, not conventional tropes though, but there are elements of it's unique though as a film. And then there's like Jacob's Ladder, it is classically, there are classic tropes of horror, but there's also there's a background in the military and such, and then there's you know there are still a mixture though of elements. So I think a mixture of elements benefits horror along with maybe rom-coms generally, because I cannot think of it. Yeah, so they really do, and this one did this movie really did as well. Um, so mixture sometimes really does elevate movies to something greater, something better. So you gonna do?